The rain showed no mercy that afternoon. It fell in relentless sheets, turning the streets into shallow rivers, the sky hanging low and gray as thunder rolled in the distance. People rushed past, clutching umbrellas and shielding themselves with briefcases, heads bowed, minds occupied with reaching shelter. In the middle of it all, she remained still, a mother sitting on the cold, wet pavement, her clothes clinging to her skin, hair plastered to her face, and her child huddled close against her chest. The woman's eyes were wide, not just from the cold, but from something deeper, a quiet, exhausted kind of desperation. She wasn't calling out, she wasn't shouting. Instead, she simply held a cardboard sign in her trembling hands. The words, though smudged by water, were still visible enough to read. "Need food. Baby is hungry. Please help." There was no theatrics, no dramatics, just the raw honesty of someone who had run out of options. Cars sped by, spraying water from the gutters. Some pedestrians slowed slightly to glance at her before moving on, guilt flickering in their eyes. Most didn't look at all. People were wet, tired, and anxious to escape the weather, and perhaps the discomfort of witnessing someone else's pain. But the mother didn't plead or reach out. She rocked gently, trying to keep her child warm, her lips moving soundlessly, perhaps in a prayer, perhaps just trying to calm herself. Her child, too young to understand the weight of the situation, had stopped crying. The little one clung to her with wide, quiet eyes, face pressed into her shoulder. The plastic bag she had used as a makeshift cover had torn long ago, and both of them were soaked through. Still, she didn't move. The street corner had become her waiting place, not for a miracle, but for something, anything. Beneath her, the concrete was cold and unkind. Hunger gnawed at her, but her thoughts were fixed on the tiny frame she held. She hadn't eaten since the previous morning. She had walked miles to this part of town, a wealthier district where the chances of kindness might be higher. So far, all she'd collected in her small cup were a few coins, drowned by the rain. She wasn't always like this. Once, not long ago, she had a home, a routine, even dreams. But life had a way of unraveling quickly when a few things went wrong at the same time. A lost job, an eviction, a partner who disappeared when things got tough. And just like that, she had become invisible to the world. A mother seen only when it was convenient for others to acknowledge suffering. But still she waited. Not because she believed someone was coming, but because there was nowhere else left to go. And even in the rain, even in despair, there was a trace of hope in the way she held her child. Tight, protective, as if shielding a flame. The black car glided through the rain-soaked street, its engine barely audible over the downpour. Tinted windows concealed the man inside, a billionaire whose name stirred conversations in boardrooms and business schools alike. Known for his ruthless ambition, precision in deals, and calculated silence in public affairs, he carried the aura of a man who had seen everything and been moved by nothing. Headlines painted him as brilliant but cold, a strategist who cared only for numbers, not people. Inside the car, he sat alone, skimming through emails on a tablet, half listening to the news on the dashboard. Meetings were stacked back to back, and another acquisition was underway. The rain tapped rhythmically against the windows, but it was just background noise to him, like so many things in life that no longer registered as real. Suffering, sentiment, even beauty, he had long placed them in the category of distractions. But as the car slowed to navigate a turn, something shifted. His eyes caught the blur of a woman on the sidewalk. Not just any passerby, but something in the posture, the stillness, the image of a soaked figure clutching a child. For a brief second, the world seemed to pause. The rain didn't matter, the schedule didn't matter. The weight of money in his accounts, the digital maze of his empire, it all receded like background static. His hand raised slightly, unconsciously, causing the driver to hesitate. The car stopped, its tires brushing the curb. The wipers continued their steady rhythm, but he no longer noticed the pattern. His gaze was fixed outside, on the woman who hadn't moved. No fanfare, no performance, just a quiet desperation that somehow pierced through the glass cocoon he had lived in for years. He didn't know why it bothered him. He had passed hundreds of such faces before without a second glance. Maybe it was the child. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was something he didn't even understand himself. All he knew was that, for the first time in years, he felt something stir, a feeling not born of profit margins or quarterly reports. His hand reached for the door handle, a subtle pause. Then he stepped out. The rain hit him like a wall, cold, uninviting, unforgiving. His tailored coat was no match for the storm, but he didn't retreat. With every step he took toward the woman, an invisible wall inside him began to crack. The instincts that once told him to keep moving, to stay detached, to avoid involvement, now felt strangely hollow. He didn't have a plan. He wasn't thinking in terms of charity, publicity, or redemption. It was simpler than that. He had seen something human, unfiltered, raw, and painfully real, and it had reached the part of him he thought was long gone. That day, something broke through the armor. She didn't flinch when he approached. Maybe she was too tired, or maybe she had already accepted being overlooked, judged, or ignored. But this time, there was no hurried glance, no dismissive step to the side. He didn't offer a bill or drop coins into the soggy cup. He simply crouched down beside her, his clothes absorbing the same cold rain as hers, his eyes level with hers. His voice, when it came, wasn't laced with pity. It carried the calm, quiet tone of someone genuinely curious. The question wasn't, "How much do you need?" or "Why are you here?" It was just a simple, human question. What happened? For a moment, her lips parted, but no words came. She had told parts of her story to strangers before. Snippets, fragments, but never the whole of it. People didn't have time. They didn't really want to know. But this man waited, and so she spoke. Slowly at first, cautiously, measuring his silence to see if it was real. She told him about her degree in education, how she once worked at a school, how the school shut down during budget cuts and she lost her job. She told him about her mother's sudden illness, the medical bills, the debts that piled up. She spoke of the partner who left as soon as things got hard, and how, with a newborn in her arms and nowhere to go, she was forced to leave her apartment. The shelters were full. The job she applied for never called back. Each step wasn't a fall, just a slip. But they added up, and soon the ground beneath her was gone. She didn't cry while telling it. Her voice didn't shake. She had passed that stage long ago. Her story was now something she carried like a coat that no longer fit, but she wore it anyway, out of necessity. Still, her eyes searched his face, looking for the familiar signs. Judgment, disbelief, condescension. They never came. He didn't interrupt. He didn't correct. He didn't offer instant solutions. He just listened, completely. And in a world where people had walked by her without a glance, where systems had reduced her to a statistic, this moment felt like a break in the pattern. She wasn't being helped. She was being heard. When she finished, there was a long silence. The rain still fell. The child stirred but didn't wake. The billionaire remained still, absorbing her words not as data, not as an opportunity, but as truth. A truth that didn't fit neatly into headlines or business models. A truth that stripped away the assumptions he didn't even realize he'd had. She wasn't weak. She wasn't irresponsible. She wasn't broken. She was exhausted. And what she needed wasn't just money. It was a chance to be seen again, to start again, to matter again. And in that moment, something shifted in both of them. The offer came without drama, without speeches, and without promises wrapped in conditions. It wasn't about charity, it was about restoration. The billionaire, whose reputation had been built on sharp deals and stricter boundaries, made a decision that surprised even those closest to him. He didn't pull out his wallet. He didn't write a check or hand over business cards with polite referrals. Instead, he looked her in the eye and extended something far more valuable: dignity. He offered her a job, not out of pity, but because he saw capability. Her background in education, her clarity in thought, her composure even in suffering, it wasn't lost on him. There was a role waiting in one of his foundation's outreach programs, a space where her experience could be used to guide and mentor others who were silently slipping through the cracks. He told her she wouldn't have to prove herself through endless interviews or survive another maze of paperwork and rejection. This was a real start. Next came the home. Not a shelter, not a temporary placement, but a furnished apartment arranged within hours through his network. Quietly, discreetly, a space where she and her child could sleep dry, eat warm, and begin again. No waiting list, no bureaucratic hurdles, just keys and trust. For the child, he ensured enrollment in a local private school, one with programs that included meals, health support, and aftercare. He made the calls personally, not through assistants, not through PR teams. The logistics followed fast, like dominoes tipping once a single hand had the will to move the first. Someone in the crowd took a photo, a soaked billionaire speaking with a homeless woman. The image went viral within hours, circulating across platforms with breathless captions and assumptions. Reporters reached out. News vans appeared at the curb the next morning, but when asked for a statement, the billionaire gave none. He refused interviews. He rejected praise. His foundation quietly confirmed the action but offered no further comment. There were no hashtags, no fundraising campaigns launched in his name. What he had done wasn't meant to be an example, only an act. One human choosing not to turn away from another. And though the world tried to frame it as spectacle, he kept it personal, private. Behind closed doors, his team tried to make sense of it. Why her? Why now? But he didn't offer explanations. Not because he had none, but because he didn't need one. Some moments don't ask for strategy. They demand presence. To the woman, it wasn't just a lifeline. It was a recognition that she still had value, that her fall did not make her invisible, and that help could arrive not in the form of leftovers, but in the form of belief. And for a man who had built everything, it turned out that giving someone else a new beginning was months passed, and the woman who once sat in the rain with her child wrapped in her arms became unrecognizable to those who had once walked past her. No longer dressed in torn layers or waiting for mercy, she now walked confidently into work each morning, her head high, her voice strong, her purpose clear. Her days were no longer shaped by survival, but by contribution. Within the foundation's modest but active office, she had become a steady, compassionate force. She didn't just fill a role, she shaped it. Her first-hand experience brought an authenticity no textbook or degree could provide. She connected with struggling mothers not from a place of sympathy, but from solidarity. They trusted her because she had been where they were. She knew the quiet humiliation of being overlooked, the weight of needing help while fearing judgment, the courage it took to keep moving forward even when everything felt lost. Under her leadership, a new outreach program was launched, designed specifically for single mothers navigating sudden hardship. It offered emergency housing, on-site childcare, career placement, and mental health counseling. But beyond the services, what made it powerful was the tone.